Good evening from Raleigh, North Carolina, and welcome to another tropical update video. Today is Saturday, September the 8th, 2018, and the current time is approximately 8:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Remember to make all decisions solely based upon official National Hurricane Center forecast and look to your local National Weather Service offices for accurate and timely information, as they are the experts in these matters. So the story at hand is still obviously Florence, as it looks increasingly likely that a southeast U.S. impact and direct impacts will be felt from the storm. But we have a very active Atlantic basin right now. We have Florence here. If I get my pin out, we have Florence. We have Tropical Storm Isaac now, and we have Tropical Storm Helene, all of which are looking much healthier than they were yesterday. Isaac a little smaller, but Helene's really wrapping up rather nicely and getting its act together, affecting the Cape Verde Islands. It's expected to veer off this way up into the Atlantic. Isaac is going to be one to watch as it continues to trek westward straight toward the Lesser Antilles, and then Florence obviously is, the big question mark over here. I'm not even going to finish drawing that track because it's still in question, but those are the three systems we're monitoring right now. And just to show you kind of another outline of that, this is the National Hurricane Center website. There are the 4 areas of interest here. There's one disturbance that we were talking about yesterday is really not much of a concern anymore. It has about a 10% chance of developing into something, but it really looks like it's not going to really have an impact on Florence whatsoever, which was the main question there. If it does form into something, it would just drift off this way and get driven out by Florence and kind of whipped away due to atmospheric dynamics and things. It's not really going to play a role in Florence's track. But here is Isaac down here, Helene. All 3 are tropical storms right now. Florence expected to intensify into a hurricane later tonight, into tomorrow, and then undergo some rapid intensification, as it's called, into a major hurricane. And there's nothing really standing in its way. We'll take a look at that in a minute. And for the other 2, Isaac's expected to become a hurricane as it continues trekking right along this 15-degree north latitude line, and Helene is expected to get driven up this way, maybe a shallower angle, kind of hit the spot where Isaac is and veer back up to the north, and is not expected to be a land threat at all at that time. So going back to some satellite imagery, this is shortwave infrared imagery of Florence, and all that really means is you can see it at night. So this band of the satellite, the shortwave infrared radiation, lets you see the storm at night, and it looks a lot more healthy than it did yesterday. It looked very sheared, and it was getting impacted by some of that higher level, or all levels of shear at all levels of the atmosphere, and was really kind of wreaking havoc on the storm, which was good because it kept the intensity down, but bad because the weaker storm tends to take a more westward track, and it was kind of slowing down, and it was just not good for the people on the southeast coast watching, because it generally means that the longer it takes for Florence to make its move, I guess, or another way to say that, the more westward, the more southward it goes, the better chance it has of making a direct U.S. landfall. So that was a concern, but looking much healthier tonight, kind of wrapping up the obvious, tropical swirl is in there. You can see, low-level cloud or high-level clouds down here. You can see low-level clouds is beginning to get vertically stacked, as we say. You can see thunderstorms firing around here. It's really getting its act together, which is certainly what's expected to happen, and that's what will continue as it goes over increasingly warm waters and kind of goes into an environment where there's really nothing in its way intensity-wise, so it's probably going to spin up into a very powerful hurricane in the coming days. So I want to jump over to the official National Hurricane Center forecast, which is the only forecast you really need to be paying attention to. The official model plots are not forecasts. They're just model plots and projections from a computer simulation of what's going to happen to the storm at its current state and its current intensity. So models are really good at projecting the track of tropical cyclones at their current intensity. So it intensifies the storm based on the initial conditions you set. If you say the storm is at 65 mile/hour winds and is at this pressure, it's going to make its forecast based on that. But as the storm continues to evolve, the forecast is going to be different. If you start that same simulation a couple of days later, when the storm is, a major hurricane, it's going to have different implications. So those are not forecasts. Those are just suggestions and guidance used by forecasters to make the official track like the one shown here from the National Hurricane Center. So it's still Tropical Storm Florence. This is the latest advisory. Actually, I think there may be one advisory that I haven't refreshed the page. I wonder if we can... No, it's still the 5 p.m. advisory, but anyway, 70 mile/hour winds is very nearly a hurricane once again, expected to intensify into one later tonight, into tomorrow. And then the H stands for hurricane, and then the M stands for major hurricane, which is a category 3 or above, or 115 mile/hour sustained winds or above. And you can see it's expected to maintain that status as it approaches very near to the southeast coast. So it's still expected to make a some dire impacts over here. Kind of a big deliver quite a wallop to anywhere where it does hit. There are still some simulations that suggest it going out this way, but the dynamics really kind of favor it driving more west than north, which is certainly not good news, but it's something we have to watch, because when the storm kind of grows and gets a mind of its own, it's going to have different impacts on the steering mechanisms and things. Like I said the other day, the bigger the storm is, the more northward it tends to kind of go and pull up. And I'll show you in a minute on the model simulation, there's not really anything up in the atmosphere that's going to be affecting it. It's just going to kind of be taking its own path until it gets on the perimeter and the edge of this high pressure, this big high ridge that we're seeing, that's going to be kind of acting as a border for it, but it's not going to be directly steering it. So still something to watch. This is the cone of uncertainty, which means that the center of the storm can lie anywhere within this cone. That means the center could be here. That means the center could be, here come, Thursday, Friday. It could be down here. It could be over here in a couple of days. But what this doesn't really encompass and paint a picture, one of the weaknesses of this graphic is that it doesn't show that the periphery of the storm is probably going to be, this. Well, that's a little excessive. But, if the center is here, you're going to have effects, around the storm. If the storm's down here, you're going to have effects around the storm in the form of waves at the coast, in the form of rainfall, in the form of some gusty winds. I'll show another plot in a second that shows the earliest, possible arrival of tropical storm force winds. So you'll feel the effects before the center of the storm makes landfall, and that's what this graphic is showing, just the center of the storm. So there's still some uncertainty from about the southern border of South Carolina up to Hatteras and the Outer Banks of where the National Hurricane Center currently thinks that Florence is going to end up, by late Thursday and so on. But some model projections still suggest anywhere on the southeast coast is still at risk for a landfall and direct impacts. So they have a suite of products you can look at on this site, and I want to go through a couple. This is wind speed probability. This is tropical storm force wind speeds. And if I overlay, well, I guess this will work. I was going to try to overlay something on top of this. Maybe I can. Here we go. You can kind of combine the graphs here, and this is the earliest reasonable arrival time for tropical storm force winds. The more red, the more warm color the hue, the higher the probability, and then these lines indicate the time of day when it's expected that would be the earliest arrival for tropical storm force winds. That's sustained wind. So this is not just a wind gust. This would be, the kind of wind where you start to hear the howling outside when the trees are constantly moving. It's not just a gust to 39 miles per hour. It's this would be the winds that is associated with a tropical system. And this is showing Wednesday 8 p.m., which is just in about four days from now. This is time's creeping along here, and we're getting increasingly closer to this event. And Wednesday at 8 p.m. the earliest possible arrival for some tropical storm force winds along the coast. And this is what I was talking about. Even down here in Florida, the system's expected to intensify, but that also means the system will probably grow a little bit in size, and the physical size of it is going to also, if you're under the influence of the storm, you're still going to feel some tropical storm force winds, and maybe out here, in the periphery, you'll still feel some gusty winds. You'll feel Florence, but the point I'm trying to drive home here is that Wednesday night is the earliest possible time that some of the coastal communities in South Carolina and North Carolina could feel tropical storm force winds. Even inland could start feeling some of these, and these are low probabilities, but that's just because the storm is not far along on its track yet. So you can kind of derive the forecast track from this as well, and say tomorrow by the end of the day be around here, Monday end of the day in this area. Actually, that's incorrect. I'm telling you incorrectly. This is the earliest arrival wind. So the storm. Don't pay attention to what I said. That was misleading. You want to jump back to this graphic for the actual center of the storm to look at, and it's expected to rapidly intensify between this stage and here, and these points, by the end of the day tomorrow be around here, end of the day Monday here, end of the day Tuesday jump to here, and then Wednesday, Thursday night and Friday is when we would, if any, we would feel the worst of the impacts of Florence. So that is all I think I wanted to show here. There's the key messages here from Tropical Storm Florence. It's forecast to be a dangerous major hurricane near the southeast U.S. coast by late next week, and the risk of direct impact continues to increase. However, given the uncertainty in track and intensity forecasts at those time ranges, it's too soon to determine the exact timing, exact location, and the exact magnitude of those impacts. And I'm not going to read these through. You can read those, and I'll pause the video. But the main things it's talking about here is that anywhere along that should monitor it. And another thing that people might tend to overlook You might go to the beach tomorrow and it might be beautiful and sunny, but large swells and large waves and very, very dangerous rip currents will start to be affecting the coast starting tomorrow. I mean, the storm is out to sea. Water is going to travel between that and here. You know, you're going to start to feel the impacts with rip currents and life-threatening surf, as it says down here, starting, you know, tomorrow and starting Monday at the beach. You know, it might be sunny and clear, but the storm, you're still going to feel the impacts from its size and it being, you know, approaching. Those impacts are going to start being felt before any kind of clouds show up in the sky. So be aware of that. If you're not the strongest of swimmers, just stay out of the water. I would advise stay out of the water even if you're a great swimmer, because the power of water is nothing to play with. That's something we see repeatedly, a trend in weather. The power of water is not anything to mess with. I would just stay out of the water. Just enjoy a day at the beach, but just don't go in past your knees. That's my rule of thumb anytime. I'm not a huge fan of the beach anyway, but I would just avoid the beach at all cost. So these are the key messages. I'm going to post this as a tweet on the Facebook page as well, and also tweet it out. This being shared all over Twitter. I retweet it every chance I get. This is the information you want to share. It's the most helpful information. So that's kind of the trend on that. And I wanted to briefly take a look at, you know, the meteorology around what's going on here in Florence. And, you know, you've seen this a couple days if you've watched some of my past videos, and this is just showing the current track of the storm. You know, these represent the categories of the hurricane as it expects on its track. Here's Puerto Rico for reference. Here's Bermuda for reference. And it's expected, you know, keep on its track. And I've been showing you a couple of these products. First, we'll look at shear. And, you know, the red is what the storm is not wanting to happen. The red means the storm's probably going to weaken. The green means that it really relaxes the shear. It really is an opportune time for the storm to strengthen. Well, you see that strengthening as it approaches these, you know, green areas with 5-knot shear. That's very, you know, very low. And, you know, this is a static image, but this is a dynamic field. The shear is going to move around, but it's going to go into an area where there's a lack of shear. So I guess I should say very little shear whatsoever, and there will be little shear over the next few days as it gets there. It's not going to stay like this pattern, you know, throughout its entire track, but it just means it's going into a more favorable area for development. If we take the shear off and look at ocean heat content or sea surface temperature, you're more familiar with this. You know, it's going into some very warm water, some bath water. You may hear it called sometimes very warm water of, you know, 30 degrees Celsius, you know, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, very warm water. And the ocean heat content is also important. That's the depth of the water kind of combined with that factor of the heat. So very deep warm water is what the tropical cyclones really love. And that's unfortunately where Florence appears to be going and is forecast to go and undergo intensification with that. So that's a quick look at that, what was going on. And I wanted to quickly show you just some of the basis of the track. So this is a GFS model. I don't like showing the models because it's, you know, just one snapshot in time. But here you have what it picks up to be Florence going out. And the main reason I'm showing you this is because usually you see reds and blues on this map. You see, you know, a ridge or something digging down over here, but there's no other features. It's just a wide open ridge. So Florence has kind of a wide open door to, you know, to come and affect this. And this kind of dwells off the coast. I don't want to, you know, linger too long on that. This one solution is going to change. Who knows if that actually happens? That's one suggestion. But the main thing I want to show you here is that here's the big ridge that everyone's talking about. And that's the main, you know, steering mechanism for Florence. Does it, you know, start interacting with this ridge before it gets to the coast? Does it take longer? And does it take a track like this as it goes around? The storm's going to want to naturally curve around, and high pressure rotates clockwise. It rotates like this. It doesn't actually go in, but I was emphasizing the clockwise. So there's this big area of high pressure, you know, in here. And depending on how it rides along that high pressure and how it interacts is going to be the key in the forecast. So, you know, that's one solution. I could show you the Euro model as well. It has a similar, I'm not going to show you the actual landfall simulation because I don't want you to get caught up on that, but it has that same massive ridge, which is acting as the steering mechanism. So that's going to be the player in what Florence actually does. It's this high pressure is the culprit. That's going to be where it is, and when it happens is going to be what determines where it goes. And, you know, I'm going to leave this up as I kind of wrap up here. You know, the main thing is to prepare now. If you're prepared and the bad weather, adverse weather does come, you're prepared. If it doesn't come, you're prepared for the next storm. There's always going to be another storm, so it's never too early to prepare. So I would highly encourage you to do that, make a day of it. It's hot outside, spend a day inside making an emergency preparedness kit, have fun with it, and, you know, make it an activity. But it's always good plan to be prepared. So I'm running out of time on my counter here, so I'll wrap up this video here, and I will be doing another one tomorrow, kind of a different theme to the video of like different risks of Florence. So I'll kind of outline that, but for now, stay safe, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Facebook or tweet me on Twitter. and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.